Hey, Ben, welcome to the Virtual CMO podcast and our Masterclass Series around building out a strategic marketing plan for your business. I'm really glad you could join us today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Eric. I'm excited to jump in.
Me too, because we're nearing the end of our series. It's been a 15-episode series. And just for the sake of the audience, I want to recap quickly where we've been. We've sort of talked about the benefit of building out a strategic marketing plan, identifying your target market and your ideal customer profile, then talking a little bit about your product market fit and competitive differentiation, using that to build a brand story and market messaging, using content creators to be able to then take that messaging and build out some really compelling and value add content, using marketing automation, CRM, and analytics, and then social media to be able to amplify your reach to get your message out there to the marketplace, advertising, SEO, other content development, and then PR and communications, as well as free tools to be able to sort of get your message out to people of influence within the marketplace. And then finally, we sort of moved into building a list and email marketing, because that's still super important to this, how to maximize your marketing budget, because marketing is an expense. It does cost money for the most part. And so you want to be able to maximize that. And then now we get to video. And I think one of the reasons that I wanted to include it, because if you look at all those other things, you may say, well, why do specifically call out video? But we are in a visual age, right? Video is so important to people. And we've got content creators all over the world, whether they're individuals on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or whatnot. Video is sort of king right now. Wouldn't you agree?
100%. And not just because that's what I do every day for our clients and help people do, but it's no surprise to anyone who is active on any digital platforms that video is everywhere these days. Every social media platform is a video platform. And video as a form of communication, I think, is one of the most powerful forms of communicating a message to someone. So very powerful tool for marketing, which I'm excited to dive into deeper with you here today.
Yeah, so that's great. And I really am excited about it as well. So talk to me a little bit about your company, just as means of background for the audience, and how you got into video marketing yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that. So I represent two companies in a way. One of them is Engage Video Marketing, which is my coaching, consulting, course creation brand. I'd have my own podcast under that brand of Engage Video Marketing. And that's my way of basically helping people understand this world of strategic video marketing to do better videos for either their clients or themselves. So that's kind of one way that I kind of help people understand video marketing. I also run a video production and strategy agency here in Queensland, Australia, which is called Innovate Media. And that's basically how we work with business clients right here in our area to help them do this. So we produce content, we have full production crews and things like that, but we also help them implement and manage and distribute that content online as well. So it's kind of two ways. If anyone watching or listening is in Australia, then we can work directly with you in that way. But otherwise, Engage Video Marketing is the place to find out more.
And we'll give a chance to talk a little bit more about that at the end. And I'll certainly have all this linked up in the show notes. But what I was hoping we could sort of talk about in terms of framing this conversation today is, obviously video is a digital medium. So you're going to have to be on a computer, on a phone, on a tablet, somewhere to be able to receive it. So obviously the channels that this plays in become self-evident. So I want to start out by talking about your website. And we've seen a lot of video that started to be used in hero images on the front page of your website to almost be either an explainer video that tells a little bit about your product or service or your company, maybe a testimonial. Can you talk to me a little bit about your experience working with clients and what you're finding as most effective in terms of the use of video? Let's just start out talking about that front page. What grabs people's attention on a front page?
Okay, yeah. I mean, this is often the place where most of our clients start. So they often are redesigning a website or rebranding, or they're speaking with their, say, web designer, and they're saying, we should have a video, on the hero video on the front page of the website. It's pretty common thing because, the goal of web design is to get people's attention, get people to stay on your website, to, have longer page view times and things like that. But importantly, to actually get people to realize very quickly that they're in the right place.
Yes.
That's the goal of a website, to communicate why people need to dive deeper into learning about your business. Video is very powerful at doing that because it's kind of like in a way, if you think about the video's role in this place, it's kind of like the front of your shop, in bricks and mortar kind of metaphor is the idea of you want the shop front to be welcoming, to bring people in and to help them understand very quickly why they want to come in and do business with you. Video does that both from a branding perspective, so both from a visual impact perspective, so the opening scenes or shots of your video on that hero section of the website need to hook people emotionally so that they're like, wow, this is something that resonates with me.
Yes.
But then it also has the power of communicating, rational information to people very quickly as well. So I guess much like a impactful headline at the top of a website as well, which often a hero video works well with the tagline or the headline of the website as well. So if these things are kind of working together, then basically it should do the job of getting people to buy in before you ask them to buy, right? So buying in is an emotional thing. So this hero video on your website, often we refer to it being a brand story, is a term that's often referred to. That video's goal is to get people to make that right emotional connection with your brand or business so that they are then interested to go further on that journey with you. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And one of the things that I love about what you're saying is that, several times in explaining that you talked about the emotional connection. And I think in my experience in dealing with a lot of clients, they're very focused on features. They're very focused on why they're better, what their product does. But it sort of misses the point that, so a lot of other things do that same thing, right? That's not the differentiator. The differentiator is how you can establish that connection with your potential buyer and establish trust. But it's the emotion of it, right? It's really setting the tone for maybe future interactions.
Yeah, 100%. And it's coming down to why people make decisions to buy. You've probably touched on it in your podcast before around the idea that people make decisions based on emotion and then they justify that with logic and reasoning. It's how the human brain works, is that our subconscious mind or our pre-conscious mind makes decisions based on gut feel or emotional connections well before we make a rational decision to do something, particularly to part with cash, to buy something.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about selling, which is ultimately what we're doing in business, that's our ultimate goal. But it doesn't start with the sale. It needs to start with getting the right emotional connection, showing up for your ideal target audience with the understanding that you know how they feel, that you understand the pain that they're feeling, the emotions that they're feeling, that's triggered them to make a decision to buy this thing or to explore buying this thing, right? So that's where video can be really powerful, is when you consider how you craft video differently based on the stage that your ideal audience is at in engaging with your brand along the customer journey, which I know you've talked about in previous episodes as well, the customer journey idea. So that's critical. Every video doesn't look the same, and to understand how you can strategically plan for video content that's used in different ways along that journey is very important. We can dive deeper into that if you like.
Yeah, I do want to dive deeper into that. I would just share an example that I had. So one of the people that I used to do my accounting work, I was giving them some advice the other day on their website. And I think on their website, on the homepage, just what you could see on the first screen, there were probably 5 or 6 places where they were asking you to contact them. Phone numbers, email addresses, forms, whatnot. And then there was a short sentence that said, what they do in a very matter-of-fact way. But I happen to know this business owner pretty well, and she's a great person. She really loves her clients. She really takes a personal interest in everybody that she does business with. Yet that was not reflected in any way really at the most important place, which is the first thing that people see, which is that homepage of the website. And I think that it's interesting when you talk to businesses is oftentimes they immediately want to start to sell. They want to start to collect information. They want to start to push those conversions, right? Where when somebody is landing on your page, maybe they found you through a Google search, through some organic content, whatever it may be, you want to start to build that connection with them, not start to immediately sell the very first sentence. And I think video can play a really big part in that.
Yeah, definitely. I often kind of liken it to the idea of dating, so you're effectively building a relationship with your ideal customer is just like going on a date. And, if you think about that dating analogy, when on that first date, that first time that you've met this person, what you want to do is you dress nicely, you make eye contact, you take them out to a nice restaurant, you tell great stories. The goal of that first date is to get that emotional connection, to see
Yes.
both if they feel like you're a good fit for them, but also conversely that they're a good fit for you, right? So that's the goal in dating. We understand in the dating analogy that if on that first date we went for the conversion, what would happen, right? Be slapped in the face and they
Yes.
would run away. But too often businesses are considering their marketing in the same way, that they're just slapping their customers in the face, and
So
customers
true.
don't like that. So
No.
yeah, that's exactly the way to think about it, is kind of liken it to dating your ideal customer. There is a process they go on. Sometimes that process can be very fast if it's a simple sell or a low barrier to entry kind of a product or sale. But particularly for larger decisions, then it is often quite a long journey with multiple touch points along that dating life cycle, I guess. So yeah, that's a great way to think about it.
I like the way you frame that. And if we sort of stick to this, first area of being your website. So we've talked about what may be a good use in your hero to showcase your brand story, talk a little bit about those factors that start to build an emotional connection with your customer. The other place then, as we drill into the website a little bit more, that I've seen video used pretty effectively are sort of in two areas, and I'd love to hear if you've got some others that you'd throw into this mix, is testimonials and explainers. So explainers sort of maybe going into depth and bringing to light the features of your product, why your product is different, why your product solves a specific pain point. And testimonials, people saying this product solved a problem for me, and that's why I think you should buy it.
Yeah.
What else would you add to that list, or how would you expand upon on those concepts?
Yeah, let me expand upon that idea and kind of share some other ideas for videos that can be used. And I think it's a great way to kind of consider the website, the landing page or the front page of your website, as a kind of a microcosm of your bigger marketing strategy. Because what I'm going to kind of walk you through here, if we consider the role that it plays on a website, you can think of it in your wider marketing strategy as well, which is incorporating touch points with clients on all sorts of platforms even before they get to your website, because it follows the same idea of connecting emotionally and moving people along a journey through to a rational decision to buy or make that purchase. But let's just frame it let's imagine that it's a single page website, right? Single page, yep. Landing page. You got the top of the page down to the bottom of the page. And let's imagine that your ideal customer that you're dating at this stage is scrolling down the page, right? So the top of the page, above the fold on a website, using website terminology, is where you're going to put that brand story video, that hero video that we've discussed there, which the goal of that is to get people to emotionally buy in before you ask them to buy later, right? And that video, you're going to tell story or tell the story of the brand in a way that positions not you or your brand as the hero, but the customer as the hero of that story. I know you've looked at brand storytelling in prior episodes as well, where you dove deeper into that. So when you've kind of got someone's interest, you've hooked them emotionally and they're like, this is the place for me. I'm going to scroll down further and dive deeper into this business. So as you move down, think of it like the second and third date, right? So they're going to scroll now down further into the website. this is where on those second and third dates where you want to actually add value to this relationship, right? So on your second and third date, it's not so much about making that emotional connection. I mean, yes, that is still part of it, but it's more about, do I like this person? Do we have things in common? Are they going to add value to my life?
Yeah.
When we think about dating. So this is the same way as a business. You need to think about videos used in what we'd call the middle of the funnel, right? So middle of the funnel is often referred to as the consideration stage, when people are now weighing up their options. They can either keep going on dates with you or they can go and find someone else, right? So this is where, from a video sense, you need to create content that is helpful, that is valuable, that gives people information that they have been looking for, right? So from a video sense, this is where you'd be using videos that might be, short education clips that talk to people about specific frequently asked questions they might have around your expertise or your product or your service, right? This is where video might be used. You talked about explainer videos, right? This is where an explainer video gives further valuable information so that people understand the product or the service better, right? So here, the goal is to provide helpful, valuable content that makes people want more, right? They're more interested to buy now from you. And then as we scroll further down the page, provided those middle of the funnel videos have done their job, then people are now considering whether or not they'll convert the purchase, right?
Yep.
And this is using the dating analogy. Now they're bought in emotionally and they know you're a good fit for them, but now they're thinking about the rational stuff, right? They're thinking, but he lives in, the other side of the country. Can I move to the other side of the country? Or, or they're thinking things like, but he hasn't, got the job or the level of income that I'm wanting. They're thinking rational stuff now. They're thinking like, can I actually live with this person? And that's the same with your customers on your website. They're thinking, am I actually going to make the right decision if I buy from these people?
Yes.
So this is where videos at that conversion end of the funnel, or the bottom of this single scrolling website that we're talking about, needs to be very rational. It needs to address any objections that people have to buying from you. So your videos here might be, you could call them frequently asked questions videos, but they're answering the questions that are holding people back from buying. So it might be talking about, what's your refund policy? How long until delivery is made? What does the process of working with you actually look like? So what is your 5-step process of leading me towards success? This is where you might also include testimonials, which are social proof, right? So often what's holding people back is just this feeling like, what if I'm the only mug who got duped into buying this thing?
Right.
Instead, if you've got multiple videos there of people just like me that are saying, this was the best decision I ever made, fantastic product or service or whatever, that's a testimonial. It's very rational. It's not really emotional, but the goal at the bottom of the funnel here is just to address that rational stuff, right? So does that make sense when we kind of look at that web page as a microcosm for a bigger marketing strategy? That's the way to funnel people through it, and the way that videos can change and the way you approach the videos change as you go.
No, I think that's great. And obviously a one-page website is a simplistic way of looking at it, but it gets to the core concept of when you want to use these different kinds of videos within the buyer's journey to, build that trust, to, explain what your product does, to sort of answer any questions that they may have, to give them that social proof that you were talking about. And there are other ways that you can use video too on the web. But as we know, it's not always about people coming to your website. People see your presence or are introduced to your brand through the other places on the web, through social media channels and whatnot. Talk to me a little bit about how you think video is effective through social media. I get the distinct impression through my own experimentation and working with clients that where you may be able to get away with a 2.5-minute explainer video on your website, that probably isn't going to fly if you're doing a Facebook post or something on Instagram. Everything is a bit abbreviated once you start to talk about video on social media.
I think when you consider the way that you use videos on other platforms, it's important to consider the user intent on that platform. So why are people going to Facebook or Instagram or whatever platform they're watching, LinkedIn, for example?
Yep.
Why are they on that platform in the first place? They're not there to research your brand or your business. When they're on your website, they're there with intent to find out more about your brand or your business. However, on social media, they're there to engage with friends, family, community, with other brands and pages that they follow and like. They're there for the social aspect. It's social media,
Yes.
right? So
Right.
when you recognize that, you need to put your content in front of them in a way that adds value to their experience on the platform, right? So what you wouldn't use on social media is those videos which are designed to sell, those conversion, bottom of the funnel type videos. They need to live on your website right next to the buy now button or whatever the equivalent of that is, right? Because if they do their job, those types of videos, there should be limited barriers to people actually taking the action that you want them to take.
Yeah.
However, the other end of the journey, we talked about those brand story type videos. They can work on social media. However, they need to be often, re-edited or redesigned in a way that can work for attracting cold audiences or people who haven't heard about you before. And this is where a kind of paid social media strategy can work. So putting those kind of storytelling or brand videos cut down in a version that's specific for the platform you're on, but using paid ad spend to get them in front of the right people at the right stage of their decision-making process. But then where I think social media video really has legs and where it's really valuable is that consideration phase content, right? Because if people like your page on social media or they follow your page or brand, then they're in that consideration phase, right? So they're in that, maybe they have bought from you before and they could potentially buy from you again, or maybe they're interested in your brand or your business, but they haven't yet bought from you. This is where you should be using video content that adds value, educate, inform, inspire, entertain, all of that sort of stuff adds value to your target audience. And that's from an organic perspective on social media, so not using paid spend. That's the kind of video that you should be considering, is kind of running it through the filter of what value is this video providing to my target audience? If the answer is, well, there's no value, it's only trying to sell something for us, then don't use it, right? So yeah, I think social media really is all about that consideration phase content.
Are you an advocate of companies building a library of video content on something like YouTube, or are you more in favor of building a library of content on your website in a resource center that's housed there and then directing people that way? You lose a little bit of the potential YouTube search capability, but obviously you've got a little bit more tracking and whatnot if you house it on your website. What's your thought about either method?
The answer is kind of it depends. It depends on what your overall strategy is. And if I was advising a company on which way to go, there would be a bunch more questions that would need to be asked before I'd come to the clear decision. However, that said, in many cases, I recommend a combination of both.
Okay.
So I recommend using YouTube's search functionality and SEO value. The fact that it's the second largest search engine and owned by Google can't be ignored.
Right.
So I'd use that as my library of valuable content, education content, helpful content. But then I would also then embed those videos into a section of my website or into an article page on my website. So you have your video from YouTube and then an article in text form below it about the same content, because that has value as well from a search perspective, but also from a user perspective. When they go to your website and they can see all this valuable, helpful content there, then it's going to add value to their relationship building exercise with you and your brand.
Yeah.
So you're kind of getting both there. And then the decision becomes, with any kind of active promotion of that content, will you send people to the YouTube watch page version of that video, or will you send them to your the page on your website where that video is embedded?
Right.
And often the answer there, unless your goal is growing a YouTube channel, like that's your primary goal, which for many businesses it's not,
Right.
then I would be sending people to your website page, because that's kind of more controlled by you. You can have calls to action around the video. There are other ways people can contact you from your web page. So does that make sense? I would combine both.
It does. Yeah, and there's a lot of noise on YouTube, right? So if you're sending people to a channel or something on YouTube, there's going to be a lot of other noise, a lot of other distractions that are pulling them away. You have a little bit more control when you're even embedding those same videos on your website. So I really agree with that. If we sort of move to sort of this third area, which I wanted to cover today, what are some of your thoughts around video as part of the sales process? And so what I mean by this is obviously using something like a Loom, where you're embedding a personalized message as part of a sales outreach or even a marketing outreach, but you're embedding that video content within an email or your direct interactions with your customer. I know for myself and many other businesses that I've worked with, they believe this is a game changer. And yet I am surprised. I literally, if I get one of those a quarter, that's about it. It just seems like it's something that hasn't caught on with a lot of mainstream players. How do you look at that?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked this, Eric, because I believe it's also completely underutilized by so many sectors of business, and it's so powerful. Like the idea that in a digital world that we live in now, the way we do sales in business, it's, well, after 2020 and coronavirus and all of that as well, like we're doing a lot more remotely than we ever were, and sales is part of that as well. So the ability to go out and shake hands with a prospect and, meet with them to kind of go over the contract and that kind of thing doesn't really exist as much anymore in many cases. So the power of using tools in this way to help humanize that sales relationship, really can't be overlooked. And I kind of often talk about the idea of, as we become more digital, we kind of, well, if you look at prior to digital, like pre-internet, all the way back to the way we did business then, it was very much a high-touch, low-tech kind of a world, So high-touch meaning it was human interaction. That's how business happened. It was low-tech. We had a calculator and a pencil, So,
right.
And, a stack of papers. That's how we kind of did business, right? So high-tech, that was high-touch, low-tech. But now, as we've kind of moved more digital, we're in the danger zone of being low touch and high tech. You with me? So
yes,
we're kind of taking away the human touch from things. But video and video tools like we're talking about here that personalize that relationship and that communication can bring the high touch back to a high tech world, right? So I think it's very powerful. I'm a big fan of tools like Loom. Personally, we use Vidyard.
Yes, Vidyard, yep.
Screen recording plugin, which is free as well, which is great. It has some basic tracking when you can see when people have opened and watched your videos, and you can embed it into email and into text message. Also a big fan of Soapbox by Wistia.
Yeah, Wistia, yeah.
You've come across that.
Yep.
So Soapbox actually allows you to easily record your screen at the same time as your video, and then do very simple edits to decide on kind of when will I show just my screen and when will I show just me, or when will it be split screen kind of stuff.
Yep.
So all of these tools, I mean, there are countless tools, right? But
oh yeah, so many tools.
The way of kind of standing out in that decision-making process for a buyer is by showing up in a human way, right?
Yep.
It removes one of the biggest barriers to sale, which is trust.
Yes.
Right? Or it minimizes it. It doesn't remove it maybe. The other powerful thing about using video is the ability for your internal champion at the company that you're trying to sell into. So the person that you've been dealing with, in many cases, they're not the final decision maker.
Yes.
Right. So often the decision needs to go up the chain sometimes, or it's a collective decision. If you've been spending so much time converting your contact, the person that you've been selling to, but they're not the single decision maker, then often you can lose the deal simply by the fact that person fails to communicate the value of your proposition properly. But video, when you use video, you're providing them with a tool to sell to their internal stakeholders, right? So that really can't be overlooked, and it's something that has made a huge difference to the way we put forward proposals and quotes for my video strategy agency as well.
That's interesting that you frame it that way, because at my previous company, before I started my consulting service, we had implemented a tool called Get Accept, and it was a tool very similar to DocuSign or one of these contract management systems that allowed for digital signatures. But one of their unique selling features was that as you were sending out that proposal, you would embed a video within it. So you could type up something, but then you would embed a video in it. And the sales force was very reluctant to do that. But just as you're saying, this is the time when somebody basically has to make a commitment. And for some of these companies, it could be tens of thousands of dollars that they're committing to. And yet you've got the opportunity to personalize that interaction, to thank them for their business ahead of time, to maybe walk through any last minute objections that they were having, just to personalize that. And as we've gone through COVID, people have been working from home. There's been more acceptance of Zoom and these calls. I think people have finally realized that it's okay if there's the dog barking in the background or the cat walking across or the kids, screaming. People are more open to real life in a way that they haven't been in the past, even though video technology, video conference, it's been around for years, right? This isn't new. This just didn't come online this year. But I think now more than ever, if people aren't using video in their email communications, not for every one of them, but for the appropriate ones, they're missing out on an opportunity. And I've honestly been dumbfounded by how I haven't seen an uptick in it, even when I'm being bombarded by Zoom meetings and webinars and all these other forms of video communication, but that one hasn't taken off.
Yeah, I think the remote way of doing business and the increasing rise of Zoom and video calls means that people are more comfortable just being on camera. And I think that has fast-tracked the use of these sorts of tools. However, I agree with you that people are still not utilizing it as much as they could. And often what that comes down to, I believe, is fear, fear of putting yourself out there. When you're on a Zoom call, the other person is also on a Zoom call. So it removes some of that fear. But recording a video and sending it through email, there's still that level of fear there. However, I think that's something that can be very quickly overcome just by getting started and just by sending one or two. Maybe the first way to do this for anyone listening or watching is just to think about maybe doing this kind of personalized video message internally first. So send it to your team or send it to a single person within your team and just see how that feels and see what the result is as you send it. I really like it because, when I'm crafting an email, I'm thinking too much about the way I'm putting words down, particularly if there's stakes in that email. So like it's a sales email. But when I'm speaking, my passion can come through. And even though the words might not be exact, the message is communicated through the nuance of interpersonal communication that just isn't possible in text alone. So I think just get started and you will find that it's easier to do. And also remove the barriers to do it. Like, you don't need to go as far as like what I've got, basically a DSLR camera set up as my webcam permanently above my monitor here. A good microphone. I'm a podcaster, so I've got a good microphone. But you can just do a couple of things in your office environment or at your desk to make it easy and quick to just turn on your webcam. Like think about what's behind you. Just have something where the barriers to just pressing record on something aren't there, and then just do it.
I completely agree. I've got my whole little setup here. The only thing that I failed to anticipate today is we're recording this at 5 p.m. Local time here because I'm in Orlando, you're down in Australia, and it just happens to be sunset here. So I'm getting blasted by the sun, and I haven't had that happen to me yet before. So, oh well, you can try to anticipate everything, but that's okay. There's no problem. But yeah, it's a setup that I literally just need to power up a few buttons. Lights are on, cameras on. I've got the same mic as you. I've just got a wind cover on it. And, it makes it so much easier, and you can pump that content out and you can feel comfortable doing it because you're not afraid of what's in the background, or you don't have the right equipment, or you're going to sound funny. And I would strongly encourage anybody who's going to be doing video or audio, to invest in some decent equipment. And by decent equipment, we're not saying that you have to get a $5,000 DSLR camera in order to do that. You can get a nice high quality webcam if you're going to do that, a nice high quality mic, that maybe costs you 60, 70, 80 US to be able to do. That's not a big investment if you're going to be using it to project your brand out there. It's not an expensive proposition to take your capability up considerably.
Yeah, or just use your phone.
Yeah.
In many cases as well, just use your phone. And in a quiet office environment, even just using your phone's microphone is often enough. I mean, yes, absolutely invest in gear, and it might only be a couple $100 in total, but just get started with your phone as well. You've already got a high definition video camera or higher, in many cases, in your smartphone.
Yeah, and I just I can't remember the name of it right off the top of my head. It was not a easily rememberable name, but there's some software that you can actually use on your computer that lets you use your phone as your webcam. So you get all the benefits of the great cameras that are in like an iPhone, and you can plug that in and use that as your webcam if you want. So there are a lot of tools that are out there. We've talked about your website. We've talked about using video on various social media platforms, YouTube, things like that. And we've talked about using it in email communications. As we're getting to the end of our interview here, what else would you like to add in terms of the power of video and where you would advise, your clients to take advantage of what video can really do for their business?
Yeah, I'd like to add really just before we talked about the idea of the different types of videos that are used within that customer journey through that funnel, right down to the purchase. But I think the critical thing to recognize here is the purchase is not the end of that relationship with that customer.
Yeah.
Once you've got them across the line, you think of them as your loyal fans or your advocates, right? And how can you increase customer lifetime value or the referral value of your existing customers or your new customers? Video can be a very powerful way in impacting on that advocacy level of your customers. And
For sure.
the way to do this is much like what we talked about in personalizing the sales process using video. How can you provide a better client or customer experience using video in the early stages of them being a customer or throughout the lifetime of them being a customer? So it might be using video, personalized video, to celebrate milestones or to reach out and engage with people who've maybe disengaged from your brand or business. If you're in a kind of retention or monthly recurring revenue type business model, how can you use video at those recognized drop-off points, that churn rate, that point where churn rate can be affected? How can you use video to try and engage people longer and personalize that? Because people buy from people, right?
Yeah, they do.
If you can humanize that relationship with your customers, they can often be the easiest people to sell to again or to refer new people to buy from you. So think about video in that advocacy stage as well. And then you've got that, what I call a full funnel video strategy working for your business.
I love that, because I think one of the greatest things that you can do for people after the sale is make them feel good in their purchase decision. You want to make them feel like they made the right choice so that they can be an advocate for your brand, a referral source for potential other business. But you don't just want to discard them and say, well, what have you done for me lately? You want to say, hey, we really appreciate the fact that you buy it. Now, are you really seeing the value? Is just what we told you it was. So I think that's great advice. Ben, this is fascinating, because I think we're at such a point right now where there is a lot going on in video, but there is still so much untapped potential for so many businesses to use it more within their organizations, within their marketing plans, within their social outreach. So I'd love for you to tell just a little bit about what your company does in helping your clients leverage video more and get the benefits of video in their particular businesses.
Sure. So as I said, if you're based in Australia, then, we can do business with you directly. So my company is Innovate Media down here in Australia. And basically that's what we do, is we consult with and help clients produce and then distribute and use content across that full funnel that we talked about here today to actually get and drive results for their business. You can check out innovatemedia.com.au for more on that. However, if you're anywhere other than Australia and you want to learn more and dive deeper into this world of video marketing, then engagevideomarketing.com is kind of the central home to everything that I share around education and consulting and further information and ways to learn more about video marketing to do it better for yourself or for your clients. So that's kind of the way that I add value to that side of the world as well.
I think that's great. And I will make sure that we have all of that linked up in the show notes so that people can find you. You know, I said to you at the beginning of the show that we've been very intentional about the guests that we bring on during this Masterclass series because we really want to get people with deep expertise in this area. And it didn't take me long to find you out there as somebody who really has deep knowledge in video and knows how to use it in marketing to be able to help customers really build that brand awareness and grow their brands. So I would strongly encourage people to check out your company, and I'll make sure that we get all that linked up in the show notes. Thanks so much for being here today. I think this was a great conversation. We covered a lot of ground.
Thanks for having me on the show, Eric.
Yeah, thank you so much.